It's incredibly ironic and sort of depressing at the same time when you consider that Final Fantasy XV's story, when it was still known as Versus XIII, was cancelled and left incomplete, while 15's DLC was also cancelled and left incomplete years later. Square Enix achieved great sales success with Final Fantasy XV, but the developers saw where they had fallen short and poured their hearts and souls into trying to build onto the game and make it the best version of 15 they possibly could. The initial wave of DLC proved the devs were only improving with time, and the world of 15 was becoming the stronger for it. Fueled with excitement over an idea that sprang up after working on episode Ignis, the dev team for 15 received a green light to begin development of a second season of DLC episodes, which would serve as an alternate ending to the game while also tying up some loose ends remaining in the lore and story. This project was revealed to the public as Dawn of the Future. Unfortunately, only months after its reveal, Square decided to restructure Luminous Productions and ultimately canceled the DLC season, save for episode Arden. The team would go on to focus on the development for the new IP Forspoken. And as I have done before with Versus XIII, I wanted to go back and take a look at this bold vision that would have sought to take an ambitious creative leap for the world of Final Fantasy XV. This is the sad fate of Dawn of the Future. From Gladiolus to Prompto and finally to Ignis, 15's DLC was providing new experiences which positively impacted the main game of Final Fantasy XV. The multiplayer DLC Comrades, which at first took some getting used to, was actually fairly decent. All in all, the story fillers that these DLC provided served as a fantastic supplement to a world that already teemed with possibility. It's no wonder that Square kept greenlighting DLC, because it was getting some good reception and obviously making them more money. Little did they know how close the game actually came to redeeming itself. Just 3 more episodes and it would have made the whole journey from launch to the present worthwhile. I've often wondered what the legacy of 15 would have been had it actually ended its lifespan with the second season of DLC, rather than dropping the best parts in a novel tie-in. I find it odd that Square Enix repeatedly had opportunities to take the world of Final Fantasy XV and make it a legendary staple in the franchise. But in the end, they always found ways to hold it back. True, the entire span of 15's lore and world is spread out over 3 years of content and updates, but going back and playing it now as one complete product really made me realize how close to greatness they really were. And I believe the developers knew this. They understood how far they had come since launch, and what they could do with the changes they had already made with the first season of DLC. The reality was that there needed to be some sort of binder or glue that would pull all of the fragments and pieces of 15's world together and lift it up from an above average game to a truly great game. So, let's go back. It's 2018 and enter Final Fantasy XV Dawn of the Future. The energy that awoke within the fandom seemed like a breath of fresh air. And while for many, I'm sure it came as a shock, or at the very least an unexpected announcement, perhaps even a confusing announcement at that. Out of nowhere, the game everybody was thinking was finally coming to an end was in fact reviving itself one last time to bid us farewell with a brand spankin' new alternate ending. It's pretty crazy to think that, following a span of mere months, after first announcing Dawn of the Future and getting everybody hyped up for it, the second season was abruptly cancelled by Square Enix just like that. I mean, literally, just when the light at the end of the tunnel was within their grasp, they crushed the dream of 15 ending its lifespan with any sort of dignity. Perhaps it was sort of fitting. I think about how Nomura and the original dev team never got to complete their vision, and ironically, Tabata's team and the DLC directors didn't get to finish their vision either. The whole situation was thrown together in a big, messy news drop. Tabata left the company to start his own studio. Square had somehow lost something like $30 million, and we weren't going to get the grand conclusion we had been promised. Square Enix has produced some of the most memorable games I've ever played, and they have a depth of incredible talent, but it can be shocking to comprehend the level at which they choose to squander that talent from time to time. Nevertheless, Dawn of the Future could and probably would have been something special to experience as a Final Fantasy fan. So it is here where we dive into the stories which the developers left behind in the form of an original novel that collects all of the narratives from the DLC episodes and combines them into a literary grand finale. If you've ever dabbled in writing like I have, you'll probably have come across the expression a proper storybook ending. In many ways, Dawn of the Future acts as the storybook ending of Final Fantasy XV. In essence, the result of the narrative is one where the majority of the characters involved receive a proper send-off in a way that better reflects the world of 15 after Versus XIII had been cancelled. Ardyn is given a big spotlight, allowing us to see his journey from savior to villain, back around to savior by the end of the story. Aranea is allowed time to develop and do more than just slightly endear herself to us as the audience. Lunafreya is actually allowed to live long enough to complete a character arc, and Noctis is given a proper send-off that truly befits his character from Final Fantasy XV. Thus, the narrative is split between 4 stories. I don't want to spoil too many things about the storyline in these episodes, that is, because I think the book is really worth the read for fans who wish to experience the end of 15's saga. The first narrative arc is called A Savior Lost. This story shows us Ardyn's tragic past, and how he came to despise the Lucian line of kings, and how he lost his one true love at the hands of his own brother. We also see the birth of his allegiance to the Empire of Niflheim, using them as a means of exacting his revenge. While both the DLC episode Ardyn and the book both do a good job of covering the same narrative, the book does include more dialogue and context, as well as a secret ending that didn't make it into the DLC episode. This ending kickstarts the Dawn of the Future timeline, as Lunafreya shows up to greet Ardyn in the throne room of Insomnia's palace. The second story, The Beginning of the End, focuses on the fall of Niflheim. As the demons overrun the capital city, you get to play as Aranea, who fights alongside her allies to hold off the demons long enough for the citizens to evacuate. A really cool part of the story is that ultimately she finds herself entrusted with one last mission from the Emperor, to safeguard his granddaughter and escort her to safety. The combat and gameplay that was outlined in the book's bonus materials shows some incredibly fascinating experiences we will never get to have as fans of the game, outside of the book, of course. This story would have been great to have, as we could have seen Aranea grow to become a surrogate mother to Sol, the Emperor's granddaughter. The third story, which honestly was the one I was probably looking forward to the most, focused on Lunafreya. It was called Choosing Freedom. It follows Lunafreya, who has escaped death and ultimately stumbles out into the world of Eos during the Perpetual Night, shortly before Noctis is set to return. She has strange new abilities and bumps into a grown-up Sol. The two eventually befriend one another and fight for survival as they move towards safety. The story ultimately culminates in the resolution to the ending scene from Ardyn's story, as Lunafreya confronts Ardyn in the Lucian throne room. My gosh, this would have been so cool to see. I can't imagine how awesome it would have been to hear Darren DePaul read the lines from this book in his Ardyn voice one last time. Anyway, I'm getting off track. The fourth and final story is called The Final Glaive. I will really be skipping over a lot of the details here, as this is the most lore-heavy entry of the 4 tales, and this is where we return to following Noctis, as he lies in hibernation within the crystal. It is there where he has dreams of fighting in Insomnia along the palace steps, in a really cool Easter egg and callback to Versus XIII's reveal trailer. Eventually, he awakens from the crystal through a series of events I won't go into here, and finds himself back in Insomnia. There he finds Luna has transformed into a dark goddess consumed by the Star Scourge. Her power is being used by Bahamut to ignite an event referred to as a Terra Flare. Ultimately, Noctis rescues Luna and fights Bahamut in the physical world, whilst Arden takes the Ring of the Lucii to the Beyond and summons the power of the Lucian Kings, including his brother, Somnus. Arden then defeats Bahamut in the Beyond Realm. A lot more happens, but overall the storyline concludes in a finale that really, in my opinion, outshines the main game's ending. Man, even talking about this now, I really hate we didn't get to see this. Maybe they'll make it into an anime someday, who knows. Regardless, Dawn of the Future was a love letter from the devs to the fans. So many interesting ideas were explored, and as always, it's really sad that we just won't get to see this, especially as anything more than a book. I actually find it really ironic that the most storybook ending of Final Fantasy XV's 3 endings is the one told through, well, a book. The reality that fans of Versus XIII and Final Fantasy XV face is one of shared grief, or perhaps merely exhaustion and frustration. Oh, how we all wish Square Enix could have just gotten it right at least once. Unfortunately, in both cases, it's us, the fans and customers, that are left mostly empty-handed in the final hour. At this point, I thank you for joining me in revisiting the other side of Final Fantasy XV's journey. And please don't forget to let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really appreciate you staying to the end. It means a lot. And if you enjoyed the video and you want to see more like this, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell for notifications, click the like button, and share it around so others can see it as well. Thank you so much, and have yourself a great day.